In this video, we're going to look at 8 activities you can use to practice reflexive verbs with your Spanish classes and how you can use those activities to practice the forms and concepts with your classes. Let's get right into it. Hi, my name is Ashley, aka Senior to Spanish, where I provide easy-to-use resources to save you time and energy while you're lesson planning. If you're new here, I just want to make sure that you know that links to everything that I mentioned will be down in the description box below. Okay, let's get started. Option number 1 is a movie talk, and you've heard me mention movie talk before a whole bunch on my channel. I have an entire playlist talking about movie talk, so if you haven't heard of that before, make sure you go check that out. But a movie talk is essentially where you take a video, or usually a short clip, and then you narrate the clip in comprehensible language for your classes. And there's a ton of different videos out there you can use for daily routine and reflexive verbs. So just let me know if you'd like to see a video where I share the best clips that you could use to do this with your students. But essentially what you're going to do is you're going to find any video where maybe somebody is showing how they get ready for the day, or maybe a clip from a longer full-length film where somebody is getting ready before they go on with the rest of the movie, and you're just going to talk about it with your students. So they're hearing you use the forms of the verbs over and over again as they're watching what's happening. So they're connecting what you're saying and what it means based on the visual on the screen. Again, I have a full playlist explaining how to do movie talk and several samples and examples, so that way, right, sometimes it's helpful to see how somebody else sets up an activity before you do it. So if that's you, make sure you check out that playlist so you can see some ideas of how you might use that for this unit. And if you would like to see a roundup of different clips you could use for your reflexive verbs in your daily routine unit, just drop me a comment down below and say, hey, yes, please, me. I would love to see that so I can work on that for you. Activity number 2 to practice reflexive verbs is kind of related to movie talk, and it's using Senor Woolley's song, No Voy a Levantarme. And this is actually one of my favorites from him, and oddly enough, this is one of my husband's favorite Senor Woolley songs. Yes, we just listen to Senor Woolley in our house at home. My littles love it too, but No Voy a Levantarme is probably my husband's favorite song. Anyways, as you can probably guess, No Voy a Levantarme includes a lot of reflexive verbs. And actually the audio for this song is free on YouTube, so you can make sure you can check that out. You can do lots of listening activities with this. You can do sequencing with it. Check out my video on listening activities, because you can do a lot of those listening activities with any song. Like I mentioned, the song is free on YouTube. However, if you subscribe to Senor Woolley's site and you are a member of his site, you not only get the song, you get the video, and then of course all of the activities that he gives with every single one of his songs. I have a blog post where I've talked about how worth it his membership is, because man, I just love it. But there's readings, there's stories of different activities, there's printable activities, there's digital activities, there's tons of things you could do. So if you are a paying member for Senor Woolley's site, he's got tons of resources you can use for that, and this is a great song to include in that unit. Option number 3 to practice reflexive verbs is a gallery walk, and I've shared before many, many times about how much I love gallery walks. They get students up and out of their seats and moving around. And if you do gallery walks with readings, they give students a ton of input. I have a gallery walk set that is one girl kind of going through her day. So she's talking about how she gets ready and the different steps of getting ready throughout. So it's one character sharing different components of her daily routine. And that set is included with a bunch of comprehension activities. So students can walk around, read the readings, do the activities, and it's really kind of a chill day for you while students are getting a ton of input. That set of readings comes with comprehension activities that are printable and digital as well, so you can pick and choose whatever works best for you. Okay, let's talk review games, because this is kind of one of those things that students might just need some practice with, especially if you are required to give kind of a traditional test where students are going to need to conjugate the verbs in various forms at the end of your unit. So some of my favorite review games for this are a circle puzzle, which is where they have to kind of connect the beginning and the end of the puzzle until it makes a big circle. If you're familiar with Corre and Círculos and you play the mini version, it's a very similar style. Speaking of, my second favorite review game to use in this unit is Corre and Círculos. And if you're not familiar with that, I'll link my video here explaining how to play that game. But it's essentially a scavenger hunt students do around the room, where they read a question, they look around the room until they find the answer, then they go to that question, and they keep doing that all the way around the room. It's a very active game, but it's not crazy unless your students take corre literally, which they might. Then you just tell them to walk. It's fine. Okay, review game number 3 is Partner Matamoscas. And you've probably heard of Matamoscas before, where you put all the words or maybe a picture on the whiteboard behind you and you call something out and students race to slap it with a fly swatter first. I like to do this game in partners just because I feel like it's better for the classes to actually everybody is participating instead of just 2 kids up in front and everybody else just watching. So I give students a game board to share, you call out, and well, they play the same way. It's just in pairs with a game board in front of them. Okay, review game number 4 is a maze game, and I have a whole video where I talk about 10 ways to use maze games in your Spanish classes, so I'm not going to get too far into how to actually use it. But a maze game is pretty fun because you print it off and students are going to find their way to the end of the maze with various questions. It's essentially multiple choice questions turned into a maze. So it looks like a game, they play it like a game, looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, and it's a lot of fun for them. I personally love pairing a maze game with Corre and Círculos because the way Corre and Círculos works is a lot of your students are going to finish at various times, so you want to have something as a backup or something as a fast finisher or just what's next, right? Answering that what's next question for students just so you don't have any management issues with the student who's finished ahead of the other student. Now he doesn't know what to do, right? But just making sure you have something for them to do next. Mazes are my favorite thing to pair with Corre. So a maze game to practice reflexive verbs is a great option. The last review game I have to share with you is called Olla de Oro, which is kind of a fun one to share in the month of March, which is when I'm recording this video, just in case you're watching it at a different time. Anyways, as you might guess, this game they're trying to collect gold coins. So they draw a card, and if it's got a coin on it, they're going to conjugate the verb for the subject pronoun that's on the card. If they get it correct, they get to keep the gold coin, right? Trying to gather as many gold coins as they can. But there's some mischief cards in the deck as well. So they're trying to avoid El Duende, who will steal their gold coins from them. Some other fun cards too. You could make this a writing activity if you'd like. You could have them grab a notebook and just write down any verbs that they draw. Or you could do it with a mini whiteboard, right? They draw a card, they conjugate the verb, show their team, and then they get to, move on from there. I usually just do it as a speaking activity, so the student draws a card, conjugates the verb out loud, and then they keep playing. But there are options. Next option I have for you to practice reflexive verbs with your students are called scrambled sentences. And as the name suggests, you're going to take a sentence and you're going to cut it apart into different pieces, and then students are going to unscramble the parts to put them back in order. The reason I really like to do this with the reflexive verbs is because it helps them put the reflexive verb pronoun in the right spot in the sentence and get a better feel for how things all work together. So the way I like to set up scrambled sentences is by writing 10, maybe 15 sentences on a sheet of paper, cutting them all apart, and then I split my students into pairs. I have them move so that their pair is apart from all of the other pairs, right? They're not right next to anybody else. They are right next to their partner though, and then they're going to work together to unscramble the sentence. When they think they have it right, they're going to put their hand in there and say profe, and I'm going over there and I'll give them either a yes or a no. Depending on the student or students, sometimes I give them more specific feedback, or maybe if it's their second or third time trying to get the sentence correct, right? You just give them some feedback. I wind up sweating because this partner and this partner, right? All of these pairs are saying, profe, profe, and I'm running back and forth to tell them. You could, and I have a colleague who liked to do this too, she would just put the answers on the board and they could walk up and flip and double check their work. I like to give them the feedback so that way they're rearranging and getting that, and I can talk to them. I get a lot of good formative assessment because I get a feel for where they are as they're moving the reflexive pronouns and the other pieces of the sentences around. So up to you. This could be a very laid back day where you're doing some grading and they're just self-checking, or you could get your workout in and you could be running from pair to pair to pair to pair to pair, giving them feedback, telling them see or no, and so on. Up to you. I love scrambled sentences day, but wear your tennis shoes. Okay, activity number 7 to practice reflexive verbs in your classes are conversation cards. I've talked about conversation cards before in this video about speaking activities you can do with your students. And honestly, I feel like they're pretty self-explanatory. They're cards with conversation topics on them, with conversation starters on them, and your students can draw and talk with a partner. They can talk in a small group. You can use them as kind of an exit ticket, right? You give each kid a card and they answer the question on the way out. Same thing, they could do it on the way in for an entrance ticket. Sometimes you could even use them for a formative or summative speaking assessment, right? Student draws a card, answers the question. The set that I have for reflexive verbs, as you might guess, are mostly centered around daily routine activities. So it's things like a qué hora te levantas or a qué hora te acuestas, different things like that. And then they can answer the questions and tell me about their day. Activity number 8 to practice reflexive verbs are boom cards. And if you haven't heard me talk about boom cards before, these are essentially digital task cards that are interactive and provide instant feedback, right? They're auto grading, which is my favorite thing about them because you don't have to grade them. It just tells the student, ding, you were right, or you were not right. Makes them try again, which is really handy. These sets include listening, reading, and writing for your students to practice conjugating reflexive verbs. And again, it focuses on daily routine vocabulary with the reflexive verbs. Of course, you already know I love station activities. Several of these practice activities that I've shared make really good stations for your students. So for example, the maze game, boom cards for listening, combo cards for speaking, and then just pulling one of the readings from the gallery walk make a great set of stations. Boom, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's your reading, writing, speaking, and listening stations. And of course, I've bundled several of these resources that I've shared today into one download so you can grab it at a discounted price if you would like. I'll make sure to link that for you in the description box down below too. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked it, make sure you give it a thumbs up, click that subscribe button, and ring that bell so you get notified of all new content that I create for you in the future. And if you have any activities that you do in your classes to practice reflexive verbs that I didn't mention, please drop me a comment down below so that I and everybody else who watches this video can get that idea too and maybe try it out in their classes. Thanks so much. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.